wondrous Dharma.
The unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma
is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas.
is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas.
Now we can see and hear it.
Now we can see and hear it,
Accept and maintain it.
accept and maintain it.
May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata as true.
May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth.
I was doing walking meditation this morning out there, and I was thinking, how is it that when I'm walking, my feet don't sink down? The ground is very buoyant, isn't it? Thich Nhat Hanh says the real miracle is walking on the earth, and I just was imagining. We think that we mess ourselves up. We have this idea of water as this liquid thing, and the earth is solid, and so we have an expectation that when we jump in water, we're going to go down, and that when we walk on the earth, we're going to stay up. But that's just that's mindless. Who's to say that when we step on the earth, we're not going to sink down, and when we walk on water, we're not going to stay afloat? Is it water? What is it? We call it water. We have this concept water, we have this concept earth, and it really messes us up from seeing the miracle of our existence. Like, wow, we're actually walking. We're walking on the earth. Why don't I sink down? Right? I mean, I'm just sharing this. These are kinds of the questions you can pose to yourself when you're practicing. Why aren't I sinking? And it will really make the walking very interesting. You'll be more aware of what you're doing. You step out there. Why aren't I sinking? What is it that's keeping me up? Huh? I mean, we can come up with a million explanations, right? And they're good explanations, but it just doesn't get at the mystery of walking. Why don't I sink? Or even while we're sitting here, why aren't we getting swallowed up? Well, what I wanted to share today is part 5 of Uji. Uji. Isn't that a wonderful, wonderful sound? Uji. Sounds like a little kid trying to learn how to talk. Uji. It means being, time. Being. Ji, time. So, the Buddha says that our mind creates our world. How we see the world, our understanding of it is created by our own mind. And so this gives us tremendous power to create the world. How do we see the world? That's going to be our world, the world that we live in. And we think there's some kind of like an objective reality there that we're living in, and we're just walking into it. We let other people tell us what the reality is that we're seeing, oftentimes, and then we believe it, we incorporate it, we think that that's real. But the Buddha doesn't let us get away with that, nor does Dogen. Dogen really doesn't let us get away with that. And in Uji, being time, he certainly doesn't let us get away with it. So let's look at this. Most of us are living in the past. We've created our present reality based on our experiences in the past. Many of us are reacting are living in a reactive mode. We all do, myself included. That's why I practice, because I'm finding myself constantly thinking, oh, the past is real and it leads to the present. But there's a missing piece here. I want to share a few studies in this neat book. It's called The Mindful Body by Harvard professor Ellen Langer. She's called the the mother of mindfulness. And she gives us all these studies about how our perception changes our reality physiologically. So I want to share some of those stories with you. This was, let's see. Okay, listen to this. Of course, she says, belief about the dangers of a habit is difficult to measure, right? Belief about the dangers of a habit is difficult to measure, but sleep, how much you get, is a measurable act. How malleable our perceptions are of our sleep patterns is also quantifiable. People from the medical school at Harvard joined members of my lab and me to conduct a study on sleep. Our intervention was simple. We programmed a bedside clock to alter the amount of time that participants thought they had slept, irrespective of their actual sleep duration. When the clock was sped up, such that people thought they had slept for 8 hours but had slept only for 5, the reaction times were quicker on an auditory, psychomotor, vigilance test as compared to their performance when knew they had 5 hours of sleep. What a trick. She tricked us. Conversely, when people slept for 8 hours but thought they had only slept for 5, their performance was worse than when they had slept 8 hours and thought they had slept 8 hours. Isn't that fascinating? Boy, our minds are so powerful. Clearly, our perceptions of how much we've slept, and not just the actual number of hours, matter. Our perception of how much we've slept matters, not just the hours. That it affects us physiologically. And there's a couple other studies she gives about this. This was the next study she shares. She's done a lot of different studies like this. I just want to share 3. This one of chambermaids working in a hotel, and these chambermaids didn't exercise, and they were there was an experimental group that was educated on how how their work itself was exercise. The work that they were doing as chambermaids in the hotel was exercise. And then the control group was not told anything about that. What happened after a month? The ones that believed that what they were doing was exercise, guess what? Their health improved. They lost weight. What was it? They lost weight, their body mass index declined, their blood pressure declined, their waist to hip ratio decreased. Compared to the control group that didn't have any changes. My teacher used to say why do we need to exercise? We're going out, you're working in the garden, you're cleaning, you're cooking, all of that is exercise. And so if you're sitting at a desk all day long, then yeah, exercise makes sense. But if you see your work, if you're doing a lot of physical work, physical labor, and then going to the gym on top of that, it might be excessive. Or maybe you just see that what you're doing is already exercise. But we get in this program mind of thinking, I have to do something because somebody told me to do it, or because that's the thing to do. And we've given up our mindfulness in those moments. And so it's a warning to us, I think, to pay attention to how we're actually feeling and what we're actually needing in any moment, and not necessarily living out somebody else's expectations of what we're supposed to be doing. I remember there was a Catholic priest that I sat sesshin with. Father Kennedy is his name. I don't know if he's still alive actually, but I'm guessing he is. but he was brought up in I think it was New York or New Jersey, I'm not sure which. He has a kind of that dialect, New York type dialect accent, and he in the 60s he went to Japan as a Jesuit missionary, and this was at the time of Vatican II, and so his whole kind of missionizing got shifted and changed because Vatican II was now opening its doors to exploring other religions and seeing the validity of other religions, including Buddhism. And he came back, he studied with a Zen Roshi and in Japan, and then came back and studied with other Zen teachers in the United States. And so I really respected what he was sharing. And one of the things he said during a retreat I did with him was, the most depressing thing in the world is living somebody else's idea of what our life is supposed to be. Living somebody else's, I was like, wow, that really woke me up. Like, oh man, am I doing this because somebody else is? And we can get caught in this in Zen forms too, right? In the Zendo, oh, I'm supposed to do it like this, I'm supposed to do it like that. But everything's up for question. Rules are made by people, and they're not necessarily helpful. They might actually make us crazy. And so we have to continue to maintain our mindfulness and be careful about just entering into things based on habit, habituation. Habit makes us comfortable, but it doesn't necessarily keep our aliveness there. There's a third study I want to share. It's called the counterclockwise study that she did. She had men in their 80s take a 1-week retreat at this place where everything was retrofitted to 20 years earlier. So these men were in there. It was a study of just men, not women. They're all in their 80s, and they put the clock back 20 years, including any broadcasts they had on TVs. This study was done, I think, in the 80s or something, 1980s, 80s or 70s. Anyways, so the whatever they watched on TV was from the 20 years earlier, whatever broadcasts were on the radio were 20 years earlier. And she had one experimental group and one control group in this. And the experiment group was asked to talk about things as if they were happening in the present moment. So whatever they were seeing on the TV, also the kind of furniture that was in the space, all 20 years earlier, everything. And then the control group was to talk about things as if they had happened in the past. So the experimental group talk about it as if it was happening right now, and the control group talk about it as if it was happening, as if it had already happened in the past. And both groups showed signs of physical changes over that 1-week period, but the experiment group showed more signs. So the details here, their auditory and visual improved, memory improved, grip strength improved. The experimental group outperformed the control group in vision, joint flexibility, manual dexterity, IQ, gait, posture, and their arthritis levels went down. Isn't that amazing? Wow. I mean, these kind of experiments are things that we should be doing. We should be doing that as part of our practice. And actually, we have opportunities to do that. I was just thinking of one that I learned in Japan, that Dogen, usually we think that the start of the day is the morning when we wake up. And that's a fine way of thinking. But Dogen's way of thinking about it was that the day begins at nighttime when you go to sleep. Think about that. Right? We start the day at nighttime when we go to sleep. And so the point is that it creates a kind of mindfulness of, what are we doing at this moment? Are we just assuming this, now we're tired and we're going to go to sleep and things are over right? That's the kind of basic attitude. And we just all fall into that. We all go into a literal, like a mental slumber there too. Dogen says, the beginning of the day starts at nighttime when you go to sleep. And again, that breaks us up out of our usual way of thinking. That's what we want. We want to shift. We want to shift our perception so that we see reality so that we're more alive. And this verse from Uji that has just been locked in my brain the past couple of weeks, and I found it really helpful to think about. So this is part 5 of Uji, and I've been sharing different verses from it. This is just this one verse, couple of sentences. Dogen says, calculating times as solely passing away, we do not understand them as not yet arrived. Oh, God. Think about that. Let me say it again. Calculating times as solely passing away. Right, so we think the way I see it, I mean, maybe you guys get a different, and I invite different perceptions of this, but what I'm hearing is that we tend to think of the past as concrete and real, calculating times as solely passing away. We do not understand them as not yet arrived. This is blowing open the future. We're not aware, we're often not aware that the future is pressing in, or we're aware of the past because we've locked on to our perceptions of what the past is or was, what we think the past was, and we find some certainty. We think of history as some like solid block of something. And we think of the present moment as defined by that. And it is to a certain degree, but we lose sight of the amazing the potentiality of what's before us because our eyes are locked behind us. Right? We're looking behind at the past, and we're not seeing the future. We're not seeing the potential of the moment. Another way of saying this is we're not seeing the incredible options or potentiality of the present moment. The future is wide open. And I see this more and more, today, people are in so much fear of the future. And the fear is based on ideas of what's going to happen. They've already locked the future in. Right? The future has been locked in. This is what's going to happen. My whole world's going to turn to fill in the blank. Right? And it's not a positive. Right? Calculating times as solely passing away. Right? We're calculating. That word calculating is when we look at that word from Zen perspective, it's problematic when we start calculating. Right? We do not understand. This is the problem. We do not understand them as not yet arrived. Wow. Oh, gosh.
So there's a difference between 8 p.m. and 4 hours before midnight. What time is it? It's 4 hours before midnight. You mean 8 p.m., don't you? No.
Yeah.
I mean 4 hours
Yeah.
before midnight.
That's something to get our heads wrapped around. Yeah. Although, here's the next one. Although our understandings are times, they are not occasioned by them. In other words, understandings, plural, have no basis in time. It's hard to get our mind wrapped. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around this, but I've also been thinking of this word uji. Dogen makes objects into time, which is also a very interesting and strange way of perceiving. So like the book, this is a moment of time. The zafu is a moment of time. The floor is time. But we could also say that time itself is being. Time itself is being. That's an interesting way to think. And it's an interesting way to sit, too, when you're doing Zazen. Because we are preoccupied with the time. How much longer do I have? Has that thought ever occurred to you? What if we were to flip that on its head and say, that time is being, right? Being. We could flip that around in our minds and say, this is being. Being is happening right now. Right? Being is clicking away or ticking away. So these are ways to work with life. We can experiment. You know, the Zendo is an experimental hall. It's a laboratory. I see it as. And how we've got to work with our minds here when we're sitting. There's many ways to practice. Of course, there's when we sit shikantaza. What's our perception? What's the world that we're living in? It may not be that we're sitting shikantaza. We might be actually just reliving memories of the past while we're sitting, and we're not actually present. So what I just want to encourage that. I want to close with another perception of time here, but I want to encourage us to consider experiments with time as we're here in the Zendo over the next day of sitting, and think about how can you perceive time differently. What experiments might you come up with that help you to perceive differently what you're experiencing? Because like we're seeing, if our perception of things change, if our perception changes, our physiology changes too. Right? It's the difference between living a life of a lot of stress and anxiety versus a life of, hey, everything's okay, I'm at peace. So what can we do? How can we sit in ways that shift our perception when it's getting tricky and difficult to sit, right? When you're thinking about what time is it? How much more do we have? Right? So you're in the driver's seat. You're in the driver's seat in the Zendo. And you can change the speed at which you go. You can speed it up, you can slow it down. Rather than just, it couldn't be, it's just the way it is, right? So watch yourself in that particular mindset of, it's just the way it is, I have to deal with it. If that's the mindset that's percolating upwards in the upper layers of consciousness, there may be more that you can do. So just an encouragement to experiment and maybe consider, if you have some success with this, sharing what you found. So I want to close with this book called Cosmology. It's a fascinating read by Brian Swim, who's a mathematical cosmologist. So he knows all of the science behind, he knows physics really well. He knows how the planets work. He knows how the stars, how the stars come into being and how they go out of being. He knows about the origin of the universe even. And this stuff, he's not alone there. He's one of many. But all this stuff has been calculated. The Big Bang from the start of the universe has been calculated. So he writes about this stuff as an autobiography. And it's just fascinating. But I want to share this one paragraph he writes, because I think it's very relevant for our perception of time. The origin was here, light from the beginning, the cosmic background radiation suffusing the cathedral. So he had been at a church service, and one of his teachers, Thomas Berry, was giving a sermon about this, and he was having a totally different experience, kind of like we can here too in the Zendo. He was having a totally different experience of that, sitting in the church, based on his understanding of light. The origin was here, right? Not somewhere else. Where's the origin? Right here. Light from the beginning, the cosmic background radiation suffusing the cathedral, bathing everything. A silky, ethereal fluid, too subtle to be felt as it brushed against our skin. Einstein had shocked the world of science by announcing that time was variable. Isn't that amazing? We know this in our academic studies, yet we don't put it into practice. That's what I'm getting at. We got to put this into practice. That time is variable. Time is based on our perception. Time was variable. That time slowed down with velocity. Time slows down with velocity. That's amazing. The faster you go, the slower time goes. Have you ever had that experience when you're sitting and all of a sudden it's like 30 minutes goes by like that, and wait a minute, the bell just rang, what happened? Our perceptions can also, depending on how we're sitting, we can physiologically speed up when we're sitting still. And that speeds, it's almost like the time goes by quicker. He said that time slowed down with velocity. There was no universal time, but trillions of unique times, one for every entity in the expanding universe. It's exactly what Dogen is saying in Uji. For the time being, a 16-foot golden Buddha statue. For the time being, 8-hand. He everything he's saying. The physical objects are time. We are time. Right? Nothing could be more counterintuitive, right? And yet, when physicists measured elementary particles moving at high speeds, the calculations of Einstein proved to be exact. Time slowed down, and the ultimate surprise was that at the speed of light, time ceased. Wow. Time ceases at the speed of light. This cosmic microwave light from the beginning of time was everywhere present in the cathedral and had not aged 1 second in its journey from the origin of the universe.
Yeah.
That's what, the center is happening right now.
Yeah.
This cosmic background radiation, it's not just in that cathedral, it's happening right now. Right? That energy from the back, what's called the background radiation light. I don't understand all this stuff. I don't expect anybody to understand it. But use our, we understand the Big Bang, right? And there's this light flaring forth, and it created the universe as we know it, including our planet, the sun, the stars, and everything. And there's this background light that scientists pick up on that has traveled to this moment. But for that light, it's as though the start of the universe was this second. Wow.
Yeah.
That just blows our minds.
May I add? Einstein also said that creativity or imagination is more important than knowledge.
Wow. Yeah. And this is what so let's engage our imagination when we're sitting, right? What are we doing? Yeah. Its arrival was the same moment as its departure.
Is it because it's so fast that it's that way? Is that why? Or?
I don't know why.
Okay.
I don't understand the science, but
okay,
it plays with my mind,
Right, yeah.
If you want to study this stuff, you go ahead. But the problem is a lot of people that study this stuff aren't ignited by it. And so they present it in a way that's not fascinating. And Brian Swim is an exception to that, right?
And it's the theory of relativity is what Einstein talks about.
Which is like
how everything, or there's a relative association between light and time.
Is it a thing where it's like you look away and then you look back at the thing and it acts differently?
That's quantum physics.
Okay, I don't know. Sorry, I'll Google it later. It's all good.
Right. Well, but let's not get caught up in the science behind this and trying to understand it. It's painting a picture for us for how we need to use this and bring it practically into our world. It makes life way more interesting. And as opposed to, for example, life happened, life began the universe started billions of years ago, as opposed to we're witnessing the beginning of the universe right now. That's a completely different way of thinking. It's not ignoring the past at all, but it's enlivening the present. So anyways, we've got a chance to experiment, yeah.
Well, you just reminded me that I just heard somebody explaining something. There was an amazing supernova in 1987, I think, huge. And lots of astronomers got to see it. But what he said is, this is from a star 170,000 light years away. And therefore, what we're seeing is 170,000 years ago.
Amazing, right? Yeah, wow. So anyways, let's put it, any other comments people want to make? Share? But do consider, how can we engage our own imaginations here in sitting, using some of these tools that, inspired by some of these experiments that are being done, or some of the discoveries of science, right? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Daishin. Call and response. Beings are numberless.